Wealth in retirement doesn't just depend on how much you've saved, but also on what you still insist on saving. There are things right there, right next to you, that seem harmless, maybe even valuable, but in practice, they're silently draining your money. And the worst part, the more time passes, the less value they have. In this video, you'll discover the 7 things that need to be sold before retirement. Not later. Not when it's convenient. Now, because each one of them represents a money opportunity that could simply disappear. If this sounds like you, like and subscribe to the channel because what comes next could change the way you see your assets, your money, and your future. Let's start with a classic. The car you no longer need. It's not just about having a vehicle. It's about keeping a symbol that may no longer make sense but is still there, consuming more than it gives back. It's common to see people entering retirement with a luxury SUV parked in the garage, or even 2 cars, when now they only have a light routine, with fewer trips and no need for so much structure. And that's where the trap comes in, the belief that this is asset. But a car that doesn't appreciate in value is not an asset. It's a pure liability. And worse, it's a liability that disguises itself as an achievement. While you're proud of it, it drains you little by little. High insurance, which increases with the age of the car and often with yours as well. Expensive property taxes or state taxes, even if the car barely drives 500 miles per month. Increasingly frequent and expensive maintenance, especially on imported or luxury models. And of course, the silent depreciation, which makes the car lose hundreds or thousands of dollars per month, even when it's parked. Now, stop and think. Do you really need 2 cars? A model that gets 15 miles per gallon, while your new lifestyle requires at most a few trips to the supermarket and occasional visits to friends or family. Many people only realize too late that holding on to an expensive car in retirement is like keeping an industrial stove to cook noodles. It's overkill. It's a waste. Selling that car now, while it still has resale value, can bring you $15,000 to $40,000. And that money can be used much more wisely. Creating a liquid emergency fund, investing in assets that generate monthly dividends, or simply eliminating a debt that has been following you for years. And if your concern is mobility, remember, the world has changed. Today, you can rent a car only when you need it, or use ride-hailing services much more efficiently and in many cases, spending less per year than you would just spend on insurance for a parked car. Retirement is about efficiency, not image, and if your car is there only to say something about you and not to serve your new routine, then maybe it's time to let it go. You've worked too hard to now be tied up in unnecessary expenses. And what comes next may seem even more valuable than a car, but it's doing the same silent damage. And speaking of debt, the next item on the list may be giving you status on the outside, but it's taking away your security on the inside. The huge house with 5 bedrooms, a living room with high ceilings, a swimming pool in the backyard, a yard that looks like a golf course. For years, it was the symbol of achievement. The place where the children grew up, where they celebrated birthdays, Christmases, victories, and even farewells. But now, it is silent. The rooms are empty, the stairs seem steeper, and the garden? An obligation, no longer a pleasure. Keeping a large house in retirement can seem like an emotional choice, and that is exactly why it becomes dangerous. Because emotional attachment masks the real cost. And it is not just the obvious. Yes, there are high annual taxes, insurance that increases as the property ages, the energy bill that makes no sense for 2 people, or just 1, and of course, the constant maintenance that no one else sees but you feel in your pocket. But there are other invisible costs. Opportunity. Every dollar tied up in this house is a dollar that could be working for you. Taking care of a large home requires time and energy that could now be devoted to experiences rather than repairs. In times of urgency, selling a large property can take months or even years, especially if the market turns. The most common mistake is to wait too long. believing that the real estate market will rise just a little bit more before selling. But no one controls the cycle. And every year you put off this decision, more money slips through the cracks of expensive-to-maintain windows. The real question is not whether this home represents success. The question is, does this home still represent your lifestyle? Because selling now, while the market is still buoyant, can free up $200,000, $400,000, or even $1 million. Real money, immediate liquidity, capital that can be invested in smaller, more efficient properties with reduced costs, allocated to real estate funds which pay monthly dividends without the headache of maintenance, or saved as a solid reserve which guarantees freedom of choice instead of obligations with bricks. And there's more. When you get rid of a high-status property, you're not giving up comfort. You're embracing lightness, more time, less worry, and more ability to adapt. Maybe this is the time to leave this house full of physical memories, to live new, lighter, and freer experiences. Retirement doesn't have to mean hoarding. It can and should mean mobility. And if you think you've already gotten rid of big expenses, wait until the next item. It seems harmless, but it could be holding you back from the past and draining your future without you realizing it. Over the years, many people have built up real personal arsenals, carpentry tools that seemed essential, sound equipment for a studio that never left the garage, machines for hobbies that were once intense and now lie dormant. It's a silent collection of promises. Each item was purchased with the idea that it would be useful one day. And maybe it was. But now they're just sitting around, stored in boxes, taking up physical space and also mental space. A $2,000 electric saw that was only used to renovate a shelf. A professional drone that only flew 3 times. An expensive DSLR camera bought in the excitement of becoming a photographer during the holidays. Or that welding machine that seemed like a good investment until the project was forgotten in the basement. This equipment, despite being expensive, depreciates quickly. What's worth $2,000 today can drop to $400 in a year, and when you decide to sell it, no one wants it anymore because newer, cheaper models are already on the market. And there's more. Technology changes too quickly. What was top of the line 5 years ago is now considered slow, heavy, outdated, and you're left with an invisible asset that only gathers dust and loses value. But there's an even more delicate detail. Many of these objects are connected to an old identity. The one who built everything with their own hands. The photographer who photographed her grandchildren at every event. The weekend musician who dreamed of starting a band. And it's okay if those times are gone. The problem is when attachment to these versions of the past prevents you from freeing up space and capital for the present and the future. Selling these tools and equipment now can put thousands of dollars in your hands. Money that can be used to live new experiences, not to keep objects from the past. And more than that, letting go is liberating. It's when you say, that time was important, but now I'm free to live another moment. Open the closet, the basement, the storage room, the back room, and ask yourself an honest question. Does it still serve you? Or is it just there as a souvenir disguised as valuable junk? What you discover may surprise and enrich you. And speaking of the past, there's something even more personal tucked away in your closet that seems harmless, but is silently losing you money every month. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel because what comes next could change the way you see your assets, your money, and your future. Closets tell stories. Each piece hanging there represents a moment, an achievement, a phase in life. The Swiss watch bought with your first generous bonus, the leather bag that cost a month's salary but was worth the investment, the tailored suit worn to the last company event before retirement, the designer dress bought for a wedding we no longer remember. These pieces were symbols of status, success, or even identity, and indeed they played a role. But now they are stored away, protected in covers, silent, untouched, valuable, but useless. The market for used luxury items has never been so active. Platforms such as The RealReal, Fashionphile, Chrono24, and eBay are full of buyers, many of them young, willing to pay thousands of dollars for second-hand pieces as long as they are well kept and authentic. There are people making $3,000, $5,000, or even $10,000 from a single sale of a designer watch or an iconic handbag. And you know what's even more curious? The longer you hold on to these items, the lower their value tends to be. Because brands change, fashions evolve, the perception of value changes. What is desirable vintage today may become stale and out of date in 5 years. The issue here is not attachment to the object, but attachment to the past. Do you really still wear those clothes? Do you still see yourself in those pieces of jewelry? Or are they just there because they were once too expensive to let go of? This is common, because our brain associates value with how much we paid. But retirement is the ideal time to question whether these associations still make sense, because financial freedom is also about letting go of what holds you back. And what's more, what if these pieces could be exchanged for experiences? A trip, a new course, a gift for someone special, or simply peace, knowing that that asset is now serving a real purpose. You don't have to get rid of everything, but you can start with a simple rule. If you haven't used something in the last 12 months, you probably never will again. And remember, selling isn't about losing. It's about transforming stagnant objects into living energy, into flow, into choices. But what if I told you that the most expensive item of all, the one that costs you the most money month after month, isn't even visible? It's hidden, but you feel it in your bank account, and you don't even realize it. Not everything that has value can be touched, and this is precisely the mistake that many make in the final stretch towards retirement, ignoring what is in the digital world. Think about it. A website domain that you bought years ago and never used, but has a coveted name. That YouTube channel that you created in 2015, made a few videos, gained subscribers, and then abandoned. An old blog with content that still attracts organic traffic. An online course that you produced in the past but never promoted again. Or even an outdated newsletter with an email base that is valuable to someone in a specific niche. All of this may seem obsolete to you. But in the digital market, it can be gold. There are people selling idle channels for $20,000 or more simply because they already have real followers and a history of engagement. A domain with a strategic name can yield $5,000 to $50,000 if there is demand. Old ebooks, if well written and optimized, can be resold with usage rights. Even social media accounts with a targeted audience have value. What many people don't realize is that time spent on the internet creates invisible assets. You may have created something as a hobby, out of curiosity, or as an attempt. And now, years later, it may be of interest to someone willing to pay for access, structure, history, or simply positioning. These digital assets have a powerful advantage. You don't need to maintain any physical space. They don't take up space, require no maintenance, and generate no taxes. But here's a warning. They lose value over time. A channel without recent posts drops in the algorithm. An unused domain can be considered inactive. An outdated course loses relevance. That's why the best time to sell is now, while there is some traffic, some audience, some chance of activation. And what's more, this type of sale can be done with little or no structure. There are platforms that connect buyers and sellers of these assets. Flippa, for domains, websites, and apps. Empire Flipper's Motion Invest FE. International marketplaces for ebooks and courses with PLR, or even forums specialized in digital monetization, where you can offer what you have and be surprised by the interest. Many retirees don't even realize that they are sitting on small digital treasures, and they end up leaving money on the table out of pure ignorance. What about you? Have you ever stopped to think about what you have in your email, on your drive, in your old files? That could be worth thousands now. Retirement doesn't have to be a break with the past. It can be a smart evolution, and selling these digital assets is like lightening your backpack before a long trip. But let's go further, because in the next block you will discover how to transform these sales into real freedom. We are not just talking about money in your pocket, we are talking about autonomy, peace of mind, and never again depending on chance. Now that you have made space, gotten rid of excess, and turned stagnant things into money, the most powerful question arises. What to do with this money that has just been unlocked? The answer may seem obvious, but it is not to spend. It is not to go on an impulsive trip, buy another car, or renovate the house just to make it pretty. It is to transform this money into freedom. And freedom, at this stage of life, has a name and surname: predictable income, peace of mind, low worry, high autonomy. Here are some real and strategic possibilities for putting this capital into intelligent motion. Build an investment portfolio focused on generating monthly income. Instead of seeking long-term appreciation, the focus can now be on constant flow. U.S. Treasury bonds, such as Treasury notes, real estate investment trusts, UREITs, that pay quarterly dividend stocks with a solid history of dividends, such as Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Realty Income. Bond funds from stable companies. Imagine turning $200,000 into $600 to $1,200 monthly passive income. Buy a smaller property and invest the difference. Did you sell that big house for $700,000? Buy a comfortable one for $400,000 and invest the remaining $300,000. In addition to reducing fixed costs, you also create a new source of income. More liquidity, less headache. Creating an international reserve in a strong currency, such as the dollar. Having an account outside the common banking system, protected from inflation and accessible from anywhere in the world, can give you incredible peace of mind, especially if you want to travel, live abroad for a while, or simply have a safety cushion for real emergencies. Opening a small digital business with high potential and low risk. Nowadays, with $5,000 to $15,000, it is possible to create an online store, sell physical products through dropshipping, or digital products, such as courses or consultancies. Or even buy a digital micro-business that is already running, with revenue. Through platforms such as MicroAcquire, you don't need to create an empire, just something that supplements your income and occupies your time lightly. But the key point is this: freeing up idle capital is just the beginning. The real gain comes when you make intentional decisions, when you stop seeing money as a reserve for future emergencies and start treating it as the engine of your independence. Retirement is not the end of the road. It is the time to take the wheel with more lucidity, more strategy, and more awareness about what really matters. And the most ironic thing? Many people do everything right in the financial area, but sabotage themselves in the most invisible area of all. The truth is harsh, but liberating. The biggest obstacle to selling what you don't need isn't money. It's attachment, and it's not hard to understand why. Some objects carry much more than market value. They carry memories, moments, entire phases of your life. That huge house? It was where your children took their first steps. The convertible car? It was the symbol that you had won. The Swiss watch kept in the safe? It marked your 30th anniversary with the company. These items are like emotional anchors, and letting go of them can feel, deep down, like letting go of who you were. But here's the most important question in this video. Do you want to live tied to what you once were? Or do you want to live free for what you can still be? Retirement doesn't have to be the setting for a personal museum. It can and should be the beginning of the lightest, loosest, and most conscious chapter of your story. But that takes courage. Courage to let go of what has already fulfilled its purpose. Recognizing that emotional value does not need to be carried in the form of objects. You don't lose the memory of your house by selling walls. You don't lose your past by selling a car. What you built is inside you, not in your possessions. And there's another subtle but powerful detail. Accumulated attachments take up mental space. Everything you keep requires energy to maintain, clean, protect, decide what to do with it. When you let go, you don't lose it. You regain peace. You regain space. You regain time. Imagine entering a new phase with less junk, less weight, fewer invisible chains. Imagine rediscovering the freedom of having only the essentials. And more than that, imagine a retirement with purpose, lightness, and choice. And it's not about becoming a radical minimalist. It's about being intentional. About asking, sincerely, does this still make sense to me? Or am I saving out of fear of letting go? And to conclude, a straight-to-the-point truth. The biggest risk in retirement is not running out of money. It's about getting stuck in things that no longer serve you. While you stop living what really matters, everything you've held on to for years has a story. But now, maybe it's time to let some of them go. Selling these 5 things before retirement isn't a loss. It's strategy. It's emotional intelligence. And most of all, it's financial freedom disguised as detachment. If this video helped you see your possessions with new eyes, like and subscribe because there's much more to come. Retirement isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new lifestyle. Lighter, smarter, and much more yours.